The NBL's decision to reject the proposal put forward by a Northern Basketball Syndicate has left a lot of people disappointed, and it's the region's youngsters who'll lose out the most.
We've got a lot of development programs in Newcastle and Hunter, and in New South Wales and Australia, and it's just another barrier to our best young players being able to play at the top level.
One of the league's foundation clubs in 1979, Newcastle was excluded from the NBL prior to the 1999-2000 season. The NBL says the league doesn't want to expand at this time. Northern Basketball spokesman Jim Garris believes the NBL owe it to the fans and the sponsors to continue to grow, and he says by not including the Hunter market, they are the ones losing out.
Our demographic market was something like 1 million people, and we're the closest market to the biggest market in Australia, being the Sydney market. So there's a big market to not be exposed to, and we believe the NBL has been a little short-sighted in their approach to the application that we have made.
While admitting there were never any guarantees, Garris says the NBL guided them through their application and seemed to support the idea.
We weren't overly confident about the success of our application, but we've been given an expectation, and we believe that expectation was going to be met.
The NBL has indicated they'd be prepared to look at the proposal in the future, but Garris says they'll have to wait and see whether they'll continue the fight. Rochelle Reardon, NBN News.
To many, a small child's delight, the Christmas decorations are out, but so too, it seems, are the thieves.
We've had experience over the last few years of professional thieves coming into the area from out of town and targeting various premises in the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie areas.
Shoppers are being warned to keep a tight hold of handbags and avoid leaving them on top of other bags in shopping trolleys. There have also been reported cases where handbags left on car roofs while shopping is being loaded are quickly snatched away. Police say those responsible predominantly work in groups and are aged between 18 and 30. However, last year they arrested a mother and daughter team who'd stolen at least a dozen handbags. Their motives vary.
A certain amount of drug dependence, a certain amount is people can't afford Christmas and they think it's an easy steal to get some extra money.
One of many retail stores already targeted this Christmas season, the surf shop at Katara. Thieves broke into the store at 4 this morning and stole $5,000 worth of skateboards, board shorts and sunglasses. The 88 pairs of sunglasses were the Harrow and Wind and Sea brands, only sold at the store. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The leaderboard said it all. Miller, the man to catch after his course record, but it didn't take long for the challengers to make a move. Darren Hunter moving within 4 after a 68. On an afternoon more suited for the beach than a golf course, the leader still found sand. Miller still had some fun in the sun though, the chip leading to a tap-in birdie putt, but he had to be content with an even par round. It was a day of missed opportunity though for many. Daniel Hinderman landing this approach for an eagle chance on the same hole, but he had to settle for a birdie. One-time runner-up Ian Edwards thought 2 heads may be better than 1, but after its mauling yesterday, the Fern Bay course was getting some back. He still managed an even par round to be tied 4th. It didn't take much to work out what Richie Smith thought of his day. He too carded even par. Still smarting after his team's recent soccer win, the Uruguayan-born Danny Vera shot himself into form for the weekend rounds with a 3 under par, but the leaders will take some catching. Some big names though did miss the cut, that was at 10 over. All smiles today as United gathered for a recovery session with a difference, but the coaching staff face some tough decisions leading up to the biggest match of the season. Facing league leaders Perth, Crook is still puzzled as to how he's now without 2 players, suspended after the match against Marconi.
I'd like to do something about it. I'd like to find out the reasonings because he wouldn't explain them afterwards.
With Joel Griffiths and Chris Zorisic now out, the news gets no better for Milan Blagojevic. He injured his hamstring.
We'll give him until Thursday, see how he goes on if he's able to train Thursday evening. We'll have a look at that then.
Skipper Matthew Bingley is also a concern, leaving Crook with plenty of headaches, but he has ruled out rushing back striker Daniel McBreen for the clash against Perth.
It's too much of an expectation on Macca to expect him to come back in and just play a game against the leaders in a big game after he's been out for so long.
Discarded defender Todd McManus has come back into selection calculations, but Crook has already shown a preference for youngster Michael Prentice. He'll name a squad on Wednesday, but the starting 11 won't be finalised until Thursday night.
In years gone by, having a tank in a suburban backyard was the norm. Now hydrology experts from Newcastle University are advocating returning to the good old days.
There's a reality. There are 3 million Australians who already drink tank water, and I don't think we're overwhelmed by news that people are dropping dead from it. In what we're proposing in urban areas, we're suggesting that people only connect the tanks to the hot water and toilet.
It's thought $1 billion could be cut from the cost of new water supply infrastructure by using roof runoff water.
We're in a position now where we're running out of good dam sites. It's also environmentally more difficult now to justify them, and we've got a golden opportunity here to make use of a resource that's free.
For the past 4 years, researchers have been studying this Hamilton housing development, monitoring how well the underground tank system performs and water quality, and the results have been more than favourable. Hunter and Central Coast water authorities have sponsored the pilot project with the view of making tanks compulsory in new housing developments in the future. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
The only way to enjoy absolute water frontage on the mile this Christmas will be on a boat. A risk assessment on campsites is still underway, following the death of a camper crushed by a Melaleuca branch in January. But 11 months on, there are calls for the Minister for the Environment to announce the park's fate.
I've had lots of calls from people who are planning their holiday as they normally do, and for the first time they're discovering that their favourite holiday spot is literally being pulled out from under them.
This is the National Park's short-term solution. Cleared areas of bushland, creating 180 campsites.
I think what they've done here is a great thing that they could have done over with the Melaleucas.
And it's hard to find a happy camper.
Well, you'd fry an egg up there during the summer months. There's no wind, you can't see the lake.
Trees aren't the only problem facing campers this Christmas. Not only will they be 300 metres from the water's edge, but they'll be required to cross a busy road to access the lake. And businesses are nervous about holiday trading.
Like Bulladila, Bungwall, Seal Rocks, Smiths Lake, Tea Gardens, Hawks Nest, they're all losing again, and it's over bureaucracy.
A public meeting will be held next Tuesday at Bulladila to discuss a plan for the management of the park. Steve Mount, NBN News.
As the temperature at Muswellbrook climbed well into the 30s, some of the better players today managed similar figures on the front and back nine. Hometown boy Andrew Partridge has had better days on his local track, settling for an even par round. The Pro-Am Series moves to Murray tomorrow and Merriweather on Thursday. And the Australian Ladies Professional Golf Tournament at the Horizons Resort Course in February has received such a response, organisers have been forced to extend the event. Sweden's leading player Sophie Gustafsson is one of the latest big-name players to sign up for the three-day tournament. The Australian Open winner will join around 130 leading European, USA PGA and Australian players in a three-day 54-hole event at Horizons starting January 14. Jane Crafter and England's Laura Davies are another two of the many starters in what's already become the third biggest professional event in the country and will be the final hit out before the Masters and Open tournaments.
Christmas is just around the corner and the Newcastle shopping centres are buzzing.
I've sort of been trying to do a little bit each day, and today's been by far the busiest that I've seen.
Oh, I've done quite a bit, but there's still a long way to go.
And while some are feeling the stress of the festive season, the retailers are happy with the retail rush.
Well, we've had a fairly good build-up, all right, particularly in our toys and cosmetic areas, so we're happy with the results from there.
And Newcastle Mall is also busy.
Our Christmas trading started virtually on the 1st of November. It's spot on with previous years, a little bit up, and my gut feeling is we're going to have a really good Christmas.
But the Salvation Army is warning shoppers to plan well and also offering some shopping tips.
Don't buy the biggest toy to make the child happy. I think you need to realise what your budget is and just be sensible in spending. So it's not necessarily how big the gift is, but it's the thought behind that giving.
The Salvos have set up their care line to help deal with the pressure that the Christmas season brings. The care line number is 1300 36 3622. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
camaraderie between firefighters cannot be underestimated. In this case, it was Brendan Daly who almost lost his life while trying to save Brian Searles. It was March last year when the firemen went inside this burning house at Whitebridge to check if anyone was inside. The pair donned breathing apparatus and fought their way through the flames despite the intense heat. But soon after, Brian fell through the floor and became trapped in live electrical wires. Brendan attempted to drag his workmate away from the wires, but the force of the current threw him each time he tried. Realising the danger, he persisted and eventually managed to free him and break the electrical circuit. At a ceremony in Sydney today, Brendan's courage was awarded with the Medal for Conspicuous Bravery.
In 117 years, only 28 of these medals have ever been awarded.
Not only did Brendan manage to save one life, he protected other firefighters from exposure to the electrical hazard. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Underneath the floorboards of the new Charles O'Neill hostel at Mayfield lies a foundation made of 11,000 recycled tyres. The facility for elderly homeless people has come a long way since January, when construction began, today opened by the Governor of New South Wales, Marie Bashir, and those attending hailed its environmentally friendly design.
We've actually won an Energy Efficiency Award with the Newcastle City Council Environmental Awards last week, which we're very pleased with.
A range of energy-smart technologies have also been used.
It's because the way it's built, it'll stay cool in summer and warm in winter. We have a wonderful system happening with the water recycling, so all the flushing of toilets, all the water that's used on the grounds and so on is all recycled.
Meanwhile, Adamstown resident Joanne Harris received a free energy-saving kit as part of Newcastle Council's Refit project. Energy Australia has provided $300,000 for 2,500 low-income families to have a water-saving shower head and energy-saving light globes installed. And Joanne is looking forward to saving up to $100 off her energy and water bills each year.
Yes, I am hoping to reduce it. I do stand under the shower for too long, and this is going to save me with my water usage.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Before the clash with Perth, coach Ian Crook had planned to rest rising star Joe Sharippa as he continues to develop during his debut season. However, it's hard to look past the form of the teenage midfielder who enjoyed his best game last weekend against the Perth Glory. It's that confidence the 19-year-old believes is bringing the best out of him.
In the start of the season, I was a bit reluctant to do different things in the field, but I think as time's progressed and as we get the results and I'm getting used to the players, you get more confident to try different things in the field.
While his defence was first class against the Glory, his strike to set up United's goal was the highlight, and thoughts of a weekend off have been shelved for the time being. Striker Joel Griffiths, meanwhile, can't wait to start. After a frustrating one-week suspension, the 21-year-old is just happy to be back and help keep the unbeaten run going against the Kings.
A couple of results went our way last week, we've still got Brisbane on our toes. We still have to keep pushing along the points.
Milan Blagojevich, meanwhile, is definitely out of the United team to head across the Tasman. The full side to play the Kings will be announced tomorrow. Jim Callanan, NBN News. If New South Wales has had one problem this tournament, it's been at the top of the batting order. On day one of the semi-final against South Australia, a makeshift pairing could hardly be faulted. Thrown into the opening role for the first time this tournament, Jason Krazier made the most of his promotion up the order. Chances were at a premium, and South Australia could ill afford to let them slip by, especially when the two Blues openers began applying pressure to the bowlers. Rhett Lockyer was in full swing as well in the opening stand that took New South Wales to lunch at 77 without loss. A top-order collapse painted a different picture at tea, but Krazier was still in the middle and proving he was anything but a fill-in, grafting his way into triple figures. He remains unbeaten on 124 tonight. Steve Carrum didn't take a back seat. He blasted his way to 73 in the 144-run partnership to have New South Wales in a strong position on day one.
While Joe Shripper's been performing well, coach Ian Crook has made no secret of plans to give the youngster a rest. This week it seems his number's up.
I've said all the way along with the young boys, it's a real big ask for them to come in and to play a complete season. The ones that you find that do that, after a year or two you find they're burnt out.
The move effectively sorts out United's forward line, with Travis Dodd moving into the midfield, allowing Joel Griffiths and Asala Massey to renew old acquaintances up front. Milan Blagojevic is another matter, with a final decision on his fitness to be made tomorrow night, which leaves the lineup undecided, with Anthony Surgeon on standby and McBreen, Prentice, Swancott and Johnson among those competing for bench space and game time.
Oh, it's very hard, but they're doing extremely well, so I've really just got to buy my time, and hopefully I'll be able to break in through the squad this week.
Things must be easier at Sydney United, with the team failing in front of goal at both ends last weekend and showing patchy form.
The league's very much like that. It's very up and down at the moment.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
This is Port Stephens' latest tourism attraction. Just in time for the Christmas rush, X-Jet is a 12-passenger diesel-powered jet boat, and it's designed to perform.
This boat is capable of 75 to 80 kilometres an hour in speed, 360-degree spins. Also, it'll stop in its own length to create a big wall of water.
But it's also an alternative to other sightseeing tours in the area.
We just want to offer something different, for people who sort of, we still see dolphins, so instead of going out there on a dolphin watching boat, if you want to get wet and have some fun cruising around the bay, this is the way to go.
From the sea to the sand, and for those who prefer the sun minus the salt water, some tour operators are cashing in on an old childhood pastime. Up to 7 times a day, tourists are taken to the dunes of Berrubi Beach. Would-be sandboarders get a quick demonstration from tour guides and then set out to test their own skills.
I'm sure that, you know, individually the guys around me are feeling different things today and thinking different things, but, you know, as we did 3 years ago, they'll all work to their strengths to get the job done.
It's Boxing Day in Newcastle, and what better way to spend it than chilling out in the surf and soaking up the summer sun? And by the look of the car park and the beach, that was exactly what most Novocastrians were doing. And while some were happy to sit and relax under their beach umbrellas, still feeling the effects of Christmas dinner, others were making a splash and frolicking in the water, testing out their new toys. And despite a sighting of a 2.5 metre shark off Merriweather this morning, beachgoers were flocking to the water.
Day at the beach, go home, eat the leftovers from Christmas and go to the movies this time, I suppose.
And he wasn't the only one planning an afternoon at the movies, a line-up for the premiere of the new film Lord of the Rings. Meanwhile, at King Edward Park, the pace was a little slower, picnickers kicking back for an afternoon of fine food and wine with family.
And it's a bit of a family tradition. We've been doing it for, as long as I can remember, and there's been 41 of us here today.
And the local swimming pool was also a popular place to escape the summer heat. This 12-metre blow-up obstacle course a draw card at Beresfield Pool. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
We've got our blood banks obviously at Lithgow and Nowra and Western Sydney, which are unable to collect at the present moment. So we're hoping the people in the Hunter and the Central Coast will be a little bit generous and come and support us.
Conditions were perfect for boating on Lake Macquarie today, with hundreds of small craft out on the water. There were more than 60 vessels anchored in and around Swansea Heads alone. But while most are out enjoying themselves, a dedicated group of volunteers man the Coast Guard radio base, offering useful information to skippers and keeping track of all vessels.
We like people to log on with us, so they call up, give us their details and when they're coming back. And then they call us again when they're back, and if something happens to them, then we know who they are, where they are.
Among this morning's steady flow of radio calls, reports of a boat in distress. The call was passed on to police.
The worst thing would happen is someone assumes that it's not a real call, so we have to assume that every call like that is a real call until we know otherwise.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Maitland was the only side to win on day one by chasing a total. Batting first today, they were in early trouble against Wollongong club side Balgownie. 2 for 26, Jason Allen joined Stu Penowitz in the middle, the same pair that belted Maitland to victory yesterday, and the trend looks set to continue. A policeman by trade, Allen charged into the Wollongong club side attack, racing into the 30s. But going for one too many was always a risk, and on 36, Graham Batty caught the copper out. It didn't stop the flow of runs, but wickets came at a steady rate as well. Kurt Humphries wasn't fazed. After an edgy start, it was nothing but the middle of the bat that he found. It had everyone on the lookout, but the big hitting bug stumped Penowitz on 53. Humphries didn't let up in his attack as he reached 50 as well. But Balgownie fought back also. Humphries soon followed for 57 as the home side began to stumble in the final overs, but they still managed a strong 230. Balgownie made a strong fist of the run chase, but Nick Bauer took a catch he's unlikely to forget for a long time.
To look at 2-year-old Willem Blomfield, you'd never have thought that he was bitten by one of Australia's deadliest snakes. Less than 24 hours later, the toddler was well on the road to recovery. Willem was playing outside a holiday shack in the remote Goulburn River National Park near Merriwa in the Upper Hunter. The first his mother knew of the brown snake, similar to this one, was by Willem's screams.
I thought, something had happened. He'd been hurt in some way. I thought maybe it stood on a big prickle or something, and I got there and he went, "A snake bite me." And I looked around, and about a metre away there was this very large brown snake.
The toddler was flown to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital, where the venom was sampled from the wound on his foot.
I just started to prepare myself psychologically for a really awful couple of hours where I might see him deteriorating and dying in my arms, so that was awful. And I brought my daughter, I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and I told her, "Willem's really sick and he might not live."
But thanks to his family's efforts at keeping him still and wrapping a bandage around his foot, he was stable enough not to receive an antivenin. He was listed as satisfactory 2 hours later.
It was one of the nurses at the hospital said to me, "Look, the sign of a brown snake bite is death, basically." So, we've just been incredibly lucky.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. With temperatures and headaches on the rise this morning, the only place to be was the beach. And didn't Mother Nature turn on a perler for those by the beach for the first day of 2002? But for some, finding refuge from the scorching 37-degree heat proved a challenge.
Well, we went to the beach, to Nobby's, and had a swim, and it was lovely and cool down there, but we thought we'd come up here for lunch where it'd be nice and cool too, but it's not. It's hot.
While some were happy to recover from their New Year's celebrations by the ocean, others were bringing in the new year with style, flocking to the cafes along Derby Street, sipping on a coffee, a popular way to soothe a hangover. And the New Year's resolutions were already on the minds of many. Nicotine patches were out early, combating those nasty smoking habits.
I'd like to lose a bit of weight, earn more money and study harder.
A long lunch in the shade at King Edward Park was a great way to spend the day, pondering New Year resolutions.
To become rich and famous.
Be happier, have more fun.
We're just going to continue to do what we've done last year and the year before, and we hope that the world's a better place.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. The HSC results are out, and now students across the state are tackling the tough question, what next? University is always a popular choice. The number of students enrolling in Australian universities is up 4% on last year.
Newcastle has experienced just over double that trend. Our demand is up by about 8.5%.
And the demand for Newcastle University has been boosted by more students staying on to gain their HSC, increased numbers of mature-age students and new courses on offer.
Physiotherapy, offered for the first time this year, has attracted tremendous demand. Human nutrition, herbal therapies at our Central Coast campus, these are all new and the demand for them is quite spectacular.
In fact, 1,273 students have put Newcastle's new physio course as a preference, and there are only 50 places. For students needing more information, staff from all faculties will be available tomorrow and Friday at the course advisory days here in the Great Hall at the university. The Hunter Institute of TAFE is another option for HSC leavers. 50,000 Hunter and Central Coast students enrol each year. The TAFE call centre began operations today.
People can get their course guides, course information by ringing into the centre.
The TAFE call centre information line is 131 225. Meanwhile, for those needing face-to-face advice on future options, including tertiary study, traineeships and employment, the Department of Education has set up an advisory centre above the King Street Centrelink office. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This time last year, John Boyd, his twin brother Gary, and forward hand Mick Jackson won 5 of 7 races on Lake Macquarie to take one of the most convincing wins in the history of national 16-foot titles. Back then, they hadn't even expected victory. Heaven knows what they could do now that they're confident.
Oh, it'd be really nice to do that again, but I mean, it's not cut and dry. We've got a bit of competition, so we're expecting a tough battle.
And to do it all again, they'll also have to break a hoodoo that's dogged them on Sydney's Middle Harbour. Last time around, the Belmont trio broke a rudder. The time before, Mick ended up in hospital after having what could only be described as a head-on collision with a spectator yacht.
Someone told me that skippers are supposed to use their heads, not forward ends, so it was an interesting event, that's for sure.
Just like Lake Macquarie this afternoon, Middle Harbour's no easy place to sail anyway, due not only to seaborne traffic but tides and swells. But the new boat the boys built themselves has shown plenty of speed, and hopefully it'll be enough to overcome any adversity and any rivals' local knowledge.
That's probably going to be the toughest battle, is we've got to learn to sail the boat in those conditions and hopefully try and match them in it.
The national titles start Saturday and run for a week. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
It was pandemonium as the 87-strong fleet converged on the favoured end of the Pittwater start line. The massive Grundig, formerly known as Xena, muscled its way through, forcing smaller yachts out of the way. Miraculously, there were no major collisions as boats jockeyed for position in the changeable northwest to northeasterly winds. Crewmen stood at the bow, helping the skippers dodge the traffic. The 52-foot Hollywood Boulevard also retired from the Hobart but got off to a good start today, not far behind Grundig. Also in the 550-kilometre race is the striking yellow hull of Liberty, with 2 times around-the-world BOC sailor John Biddlecombe at the helm. Some crews had trouble setting their spinnakers in the changing conditions, including Phil Dickinson's Champagne on Ice. Skipper of Future Shock Ron Ellis had his crew riding the rail as they left the heads in 3rd spot. This evening, Grundig leads the fleet off Newcastle with the race record of just under 21 hours in its sights. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The raging 3-kilometre fire front came terrifyingly close to homes on the western outskirts of Kurua, Swan Bay and 12 Mile Creek last night. 10 houses were evacuated. Some fled with only enough time to grab their much-loved pets.
Police came in and said there's a firestorm, and that was it. They dragged me out.
The bushfire jumped the Old Pacific Highway around 7 o'clock. Police forced to close the busy motorway between the Buckets Way turnoff and Kurua Bridge for 5 hours, stranding hundreds of motorists. The Buckets Way road was also closed. Today, 81-year-old Alex Roth reflected on the drama. He sat on his porch and watched as the fire flared within metres of his home before firefighters saved the day.
Oh yeah, it was well in Sydney fireworks.
The fire this morning continued burning through Wallaroo State Forest, volunteers igniting control blazes along Buckets Way.
We're just back burning so that we can protect Clarence Town and Lime Burners Creek Village.
It's around midday and the big fear for firefighters is a predicted southeasterly change, which would mean the blaze would change direction and again start heading towards homes. Those concerns are reality tonight. The blaze has broken containment lines. Residents of 12 Mile are yet again on standby to evacuate, and the Pacific Highway will be closed to southbound traffic for another 2 hours. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The changeable weather conditions haven't only caused havoc for firefighters this week. On a sporting scale, they've made the Impulse and National E sailors work harder for national titles.
Yesterday was nearly a disaster day. The winds were all over the place. They weren't coming from any one direction, they came from all directions yesterday.
Kinder conditions though this afternoon for the final two Impulse races. Local sailor Paul Foster went into the opener third on the point score and still looking to defend his national crown won last year. Ahead of him, the Central Coast Glenn Bond and Victorian Adam Tribe in a class which boasts broad appeal.
They are young people and old people, so we go from the juniors to the grandfathers.
Victoria's Stephen Quick won the first heat, Foster's third setting up a close battle for the title. Meantime, the National E-Class winds up tomorrow, South Australia's Norman Wagon and Rodney Gurr also hoping to defend their crown.
A break in the weather gave Hunter firefighters some slight relief overnight. A blaze continues to burn through the Woolamai National Park, but a drop in winds and temperatures has allowed crews to concentrate on containment lines around the Broke, Bulga and Jerry's Plains areas. And further south, favourable conditions also allowed crews to carry out precautionary work today in the Yango National Park.
More backburning today to actually link up the eastern flank of our fire with the fires from Bulga, and hopefully get a good containment line in for both fires before tomorrow.
But still, there's no room for optimism.
The risk tomorrow would be that the fire would jump across our containment lines and therefore in bad conditions make a run towards the east and the more populated areas around Paynes Crossing, Wollombi and into sort of the forests around that area, which would cause us some considerable problems trying to round up.
Meantime, backburning along the Pacific Highway near Karua is all but complete, following an outbreak late last week near Swan Bay. As mopping up work continues, new victims are beginning to emerge, and motorists are asked to be on the lookout for injured wildlife. A wildlife rescue mission will be carried out in the area tomorrow by the Native Animal Trust Fund. Steve Mount, NBN News.
The nation's capital is often thought of as blowing hot air, and today was no exception. Former French Open winner Eva Mayoli knew all about it, struggling with the windy conditions from the first game. But when she did find range, the 8th seed showed her touch. McQuillan, however, felt right at home on the rebound ace centre court and quickly broke the world number 44. But it was a real battle in the first set. While the former French Open winner showed glimpses of her Grand Slam winning form, consistency was the Croatian's real problem. After taking the first set 6-4, McQuillan broke Mayoli twice in the second to wrap it up in straight sets. Tomorrow will see the Master and the Apprentice, with the 30-year-old McQuillan to take on Canberra wildcard Amanda Graham.
For the Callan clan, today was the first time in 14 days they've been together as a family instead of fighting fires.
Yeah, just relaxing and everything like that.
Dad John, daughter Rebecca and son Scott are all members of the Mulbring Rural Fire Service.
I was out at Kersley on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas night I ended up going down to Sydney, down to the Mulgoa area and round Penrith way. Come home and I've been out to the Yango fire, so I've sort of seen just about every fire that's going, just about.
Their hopes raised after last night's rain.
I look out the control room window at work at Singleton and thought, hello, this is it. Let's hope it goes for about 3 days, but unfortunately it hasn't.
Bushfires inside Wallamai and Yengo National Parks are still burning tonight, despite rainfall of up to 40 millimetres last night.
Both the Bulga fire and the Yango fire potentially were going to spread into Cessnock, so in order to stop both of those fires coming in, we decided on a joint strategy to put in an eastern containment line.
Meantime, a fire that previously threatened homes at Kurua and Swan Bay was extinguished last night. So far on the Hunter, 80,000 hectares has gone up in smoke. The Callan family, like countless across the Hunter, continue to pray for rain so they can finally have a holiday. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
This is yet another case of a couple of handfuls of people in an action group wanting to hold the rest of the community to ransom.